The towel slipped from my hands, but I didn't flinch. Her laugh, a dry, hollow chuckle that bounced off the laundry room tiles, hung in the air like mildew. "You're lucky I even let you touch me." That's what she said. Like I was some leper who'd won a raffle. Like decades of providing, fixing, covering her mistakes, and paying off her credit card messes were just some pathetic tribute she tolerated out of politeness. She turned, humming, tossing her blouse into the dryer like nothing had happened. I just watched her. Not angry, not even sad. Something quieter, sharper. I folded the last t-shirt, that old one from the state fair we went to, before her veneers, before her Pilates instructor with the stupid name, before she stopped asking how my day was. I folded it with more care than I'd handled her in months. Then I placed it neatly on the stack and walked out. In the hallway, her phone buzzed. A giggle. Another message. Another little compliment from whoever she thought was her escape hatch. Her voice had changed when she texted lately. Higher, almost girlish. I used to like that sound. Now it just reminded me how good liars enjoy the setup. I passed the hall mirror and studied myself. Wrinkled? Maybe. Slower than I was at 40? Sure. But I built machines that carved titanium to half a hair's width. I ran a team of 20 men who didn't miss a measurement. I wasn't a slob hoping for scraps of affection. But in this house, I was a placeholder. And placeholders don't argue. We execute. Downstairs in my office, I opened the drawer I hadn't touched in months. The small oak box was still there. I'd carved it myself in retirement, meant for cufflinks. Now it held something more valuable, clarity. I flipped open my laptop. No rush, no drama. Just a man doing what he'd always done, cataloging, protecting, cleaning up someone else's mess. The folder was still there, waiting for the day she smirked one time too many. First, email printouts. Her realtor friend, Celeste, had CC'd her on fun weekend invites to Ridge Hill. Dates that magically matched the so-called training retreats. Receipts in her name, with a second driver listed. Not me. Then, texts. She never noticed the family iPad was still synced to her phone. I told her it was for Netflix in the guest room. She bought it. One thread stood out. "Can't wait to see you outside the sheets for once LOL." Thumbs up reply. Photo of him, shirtless, hotel bathroom mirror. The wallpaper? The burst stone again. Funny thing about betrayal, it smells. That place always reeked of lavender and stale desperation. I began taking screenshots. Organized them by date. Because chronology matters when you're about to dismantle someone's sense of safety. She always said I was slow. "You move like you're buffering," she once joked to friends. They laughed. I smiled. Slowness isn't weakness. It's precision. And precision is what was going to end her little game. She came down that night wearing her smug little robe, the one she dusted off when she wanted to play affectionate wife. Makeup wiped away, hair tied back, like she'd scrubbed her sins off with a cleanser. "You didn't say goodnight," she said, tone painted with fake concern. "I figured you were tired of touching me." I replied, smiling just enough for it to sting. She blinked, mouth twitching like she couldn't decide whether to fight or play dumb. "You're being dramatic." I nodded slowly, the way a man does when he's letting someone walk right into the trap. Because men like me, we don't need second chances. We need evidence. Her eyes narrowed. She didn't know it yet, but that was the first warning shot. By 11:17 p.m., the house was silent. Vanessa, yeah, that's her name, was dozing in bed, tablet sliding off her chest, some real estate podcast mumbling in the background. Her face twitched in sleep, maybe dreaming of her beige Range Rover and wine glasses on Instagram. I sat in my office, desk lamp glowing, printer humming. Emails slid out in neat rows, flight confirmations, forwarded messages from Celeste, all of them dated, signed, and damning. The iPad was open on the desk, synced like a perfect little wiretap. Location tag lunch dates. Hotel check-ins, messages dripping with innuendo. She thought I didn't check receipts. Maybe that was true, but I checked patterns. And people like her always left fingerprints. Every file went into a new USB folder I labeled June Justice. Encrypted, backed up 3 ways. One flash drive, one cloud, one copy stashed where she'd never look. I didn't rush. I didn't need to. She'd spent years thinking my silence meant surrender. She never understood that silence is the sound strategy makes before it wins. When I finally shut down the laptop, I stared at the oak box one more time. Smooth edges, brass hinges. Empty. For now. By morning, It would hold her entire downfall. Vanessa floated into the kitchen the next morning in yoga pants and that fake, still in my 20s, messy bun. She hummed some pop song from the 2000s like it was still her decade. "Morning," she said, reaching for a mug. "Morning," I answered, buttering toast. My phone buzzed in my pocket. An alert from a background check service I'd quietly set up 2 weeks ago. "Something exciting?" she asked, nodding toward my pocket. "Just work," I lied. Truth was, I'd just received a full report on the man she thought was her secret. A contractor we once hired to fix our deck. Married. 2 kids. 3 months behind on child support. And a suspended contractor's license thanks to a fraud investigation. Perfect. While she scrolled on her phone, I slid a manila envelope into my briefcase. Copies of every damning text and receipt. Inside was also a neatly typed letter addressed to the fraud division of the state licensing board. All it needed was a postage stamp. Vanessa didn't notice. She was too busy laughing at something on her phone. Probably him. I dropped my toast plate in the sink and kissed the top of her head. Light, casual, the way you do when you want someone to think they've won. "See you tonight," I said. "Don't be late," she replied without looking up. I wouldn't dream of it. The office was quiet when I got there. I locked my door, slid the envelope onto the center of my desk, and stared at it for a long time. I didn't mail it yet. No, this wasn't about ending him quickly. This was about timing. Revenge isn't a bullet. It's a slow drip for. By noon, I'd sent an anonymous tip to his wife. No names, no return address. Just enough to make her curious enough to dig. Curious spouses are better investigators than the FBI. By 3 o'clock, I had a call from an unknown number. I didn't answer. Let them sweat. At 4:17 p.m., Vanessa texted, "We need to talk tonight." Oh, we'd talk. Just not about what she thought. She was waiting for me when I got home, arms crossed, leaning against the kitchen counter like a stern teacher about to scold a student. Only problem for her, I don't sit in detention anymore. "We need to talk," she said without even a hello. I set my briefcase down, hung my coat, took my time. "About." Her jaw tightened. "Don't play dumb." "Not playing," I replied, opening the fridge like this conversation was going to need a beer. "You'll have to be specific." Vanessa's eyes darted toward her phone on the counter. That little tell told me everything. The message had already gotten to her. Either her boyfriend's wife had made contact or the state board had sent him a friendly notice about his license. "You've been weird lately," she said finally. "Quiet. Secretive." I took a slow sip of beer. "Quiet is secretive now? Interesting. You know what I mean. You've been watching me like you think something's going on." I set the bottle down. "Something is going on, Vanessa. You're just upset because you don't know what I know or how I know it." She froze, eyes narrowing. "What's that supposed to mean?" I smiled just enough to look smug, but not enough to give her a real read. "You'll figure it out." She hated that. Vanessa's entire personality was built around being the smartest person in the room, controlling the flow of information, deciding who got what truth and when. The fact that I'd flipped that on her without raising my voice was eating her alive. "You've always been paranoid," she snapped. "And you've always underestimated me," I said, grabbing my briefcase and heading for the office. Her voice followed me down the hall. "If you've been snooping." I closed the door before she could finish. I waited 30 minutes before opening the briefcase. Not because I needed to, but because making myself wait was part of the process. Patience has weight, and I wanted her to feel it every time she tried to guess my next move. Inside were 3 envelopes. One addressed to her boss, containing a timeline of her training retreats, with corresponding real estate records showing she was anywhere but training. One addressed to the state licensing board, complete with the contractor boyfriend's fraudulent work history. One addressed to our joint accountant, outlining every personal expense she'd run through the business development budget on her brokerage card. They were ready to go, but I wasn't mailing them yet. No, right now, my job was to make her unravel herself. At dinner, she tried again. "You're not yourself lately." I cut my steak and looked up like she'd just asked about the weather. "I feel more like myself than I have in years." Her fork clinked against her plate. "That's not funny." "Wasn't a joke." She leaned forward. "If you're trying to punish me, just say it. Don't sit there acting smug like I've got the upper hand." I interrupted. "You're right. I do." Her eyes flickered, just for a moment, but enough for me to catch it. Fear. Not the kind that makes you scream. No, the kind that makes you sit perfectly still because you realize you're on a chessboard you didn't know existed. She sat back, crossing her arms. You've been talking to someone. I took a bite of steak. Maybe. Her eyes narrowed. Who? I chewed slowly, swallowed, then smiled. Not your problem. That night, while she was in the shower, I took her phone from the counter. I didn't need to unlock it. I'd already mirrored it to my cloud account weeks ago. I just wanted her to think I might have done something with it. I set it back exactly where it had been. By the time she came out, robe on, hair wrapped in a towel, she was glancing at the phone like it was a grenade with a pulled pin. Why are you looking at me like that? She asked. Just thinking, I said. About what? Patterns. She froze again. Patterns. I nodded. People leave them everywhere. In their routines, in their words, in their mistakes. She laughed nervously. You sound like some TV detective. I shrugged. Sometimes you only have to watch long enough for someone to tell you exactly who they are. 2 days later, the first real crack showed. I came home from work to find her on the phone, pacing, voice low but urgent. She didn't hear me come in. I don't know, okay? He's acting strange. He knows something. A pause. No, I don't think he's talked to her yet. But if he does, you're screwed. And so am I. She stopped pacing when she saw me in the doorway. I'll call you back, she muttered, hanging up. Good day, I asked, hanging my coat. Her smile was tight. Just work stuff? Sure, I said, walking past her. You keep telling yourself that. That night, I made my move. I left the 3 envelopes on my desk. Open, their contents visible. Then forgot to lock the office door before bed. I also left the desk lamp on. At 1:14 a.m., I heard it, the soft creak of the office door, the shuffle of bare feet on the hardwood. I stayed in bed, eyes closed, breathing slow. Let her read every word. Let her realize how much I knew. Let her sweat wondering which envelopes had already been mailed. She came back to bed 20 minutes later. Her breathing was faster. She didn't speak. In the morning, she tried to play it cool, but I caught her watching me over her coffee, eyes searching for answers she'd never get. By the end of the week, she was snapping at little things, me not answering right away, me staying late at work, me not telling her who I was meeting for lunch. She was unraveling exactly on schedule, and I hadn't even touched the real plan yet. The envelopes were just the opening. ACT.IT started with the Range Rover. Vanessa had this habit. Whenever she felt a little too sure of herself, she'd upgrade something she didn't need. New purse, new shoes, new, just because vacation. But a $78,000 SUV in the middle of a so-called slow quarter for her real estate business? That was more than retail therapy. That was arrogance with a down payment. I noticed it the second I pulled into the driveway Friday evening. She was in the garage, leaning against the hood like it was a prop in a photo shoot, phone in hand. Nice car, I said, grabbing my briefcase from the passenger seat. She smiled, tight, smug. Closed a big deal. Thought I'd treat myself. Cash or finance? I asked casually. She tilted her head. Why? Curiosity. Her eyes narrowed. Just a flicker, but it was enough. Finance, she said, looking back at her phone. Which was a lie. The next morning, while she was at Pilates, or claiming to be, I slipped into the garage. The sales paperwork was still in the glove box. Paid in full. No financing. Which meant she had either liquidated something she shouldn't have or tapped into money that wasn't hers. A quick check with our bank accounts told me she hadn't touched our joint funds, which left her brokerage account, the one she was supposed to keep for business expenses, the one that technically belonged to both of us because I'd fronted the seed money when she got licensed. I printed the transaction history and tucked it into the oak box. Evidence, neat and simple. But more importantly, it gave me a perfect opening. That afternoon, I staged my move. I called from the office phone. She never recognized the number that way, and used my calmest, friendliest voice. Vanessa, it's Greg from the branch, I said. Just a heads up, we noticed a large withdrawal from the brokerage account this week. Want me to flag it for fraud prevention? Silence. Then, no, that's fine. Just a business thing. Got it. Just wanted to make sure. Always good to double check when it's over 75 grand, you know? She laughed too quickly. Yeah. No, it's fine. I could practically hear the gears grinding in her head. She knew I'd hear about it eventually, but hearing about it already? That meant she had to adjust her story on the fly. And liars hate that. Sure enough, she brought it up at dinner. So, the bank called you today? She said, stabbing at her salad like it owed her money. Yeah, I said. Nice car, by the way. Her lips tightened. Like I said, I closed a big deal. Funny, I said, sipping my water. Because your commission payout last month was barely 4 figures. She froze. I could have ended it right there, but I leaned back and let the silence work. Silence is like a truth serum. If you give it enough room, it'll make people talk just to fill the air. It's complicated, she said finally. Some of my clients, well, they help me with bonuses. I raised an eyebrow. Bonuses? Yes. She stabbed her fork into the salad again. You know, referrals. Private investors. I smiled faintly. Got it. So a private investor bought you a Range Rover. She glared. You're twisting my words. No, I said evenly. I'm just quoting them back to you. The next day, she handed me the gift I didn't even know I was going to get. I was in the office again when my email pinged. Subject line, forward, contract agreement. From Vanessa to a man named Kevin. Not her contractor boyfriend, not anyone I recognized. The forwarded message was a signed referral agreement, giving her a $75,000 finder's fee for connecting a buyer to a property. Only problem? The property wasn't hers to sell. The listing agent was from another brokerage entirely, which meant this little agreement was a violation of state real estate law, double-dipping commissions without disclosure. I almost laughed. She'd just given me a documented, signed, time-stamped piece of career-ending leverage. I didn't confront her. Not yet. I forwarded the email to a private folder, printed 3 copies, and added it to the oak box. That night, I let her think she was still ahead. We had dinner. We watched a movie. She scrolled through Instagram while pretending to be interested in the plot. Before bed, I accidentally left the office door cracked again. The corner of that new contract sticking out from the box just enough to catch the light. At 1:06 a.m., I heard the floorboard outside the office creak. Same routine. Bare feet, slow shuffle, pause at the desk. Only this time, she didn't come back to bed right away. I lay there in the dark, smiling to myself. Because the longer she was in there, the more that contract was eating at her. The next morning, she was chipper. Too chipper. Making pancakes, humming that same pop song from the early 2000s. Sleep well? I asked, pouring coffee. Like a rock, she said. I murmured, taking my mug and heading for the office. I didn't need to check to know she'd gone through the box. But I checked anyway. Sure enough, the contract copy was gone. What she didn't know was that the copy she stole was printed on slightly different paper, a trick I picked up from a paralegal years ago. If it turned up anywhere, I'd know exactly where it had been. 2 days later, I got my answer. An email from her to Kevin, CC'd to a personal account I'd set up under an alias months before. Subject line, destroy this. Attachment, the contract. Her message was short. We have a problem. He knows. Shred it. I could have ended it then, sent that email straight to the state board, and watched her license evaporate. But that would have been too quick. No, I was going to let her twist. That Friday, she made her second mistake. She came home late. Hair perfect, lipstick fresh, that faint smell of hotel soap clinging to her. Busy day? I asked from the couch. Yeah, she said, kicking off her shoes. Showings all afternoon. I looked at my watch. Funny, the MLS hasn't logged you as opening a single lockbox all week. She froze mid-step. You check the MLS? Only when I'm bored, I said, turning back to the TV. She didn't speak for the rest of the night. By now, she was unraveling fast. Her little smirks were gone. She was glancing at her phone constantly, checking over her shoulder when she thought I wasn't looking. And me? I was calm, measured. Every move I made was deliberate. Every word calculated to keep her wondering what I'd do next. Because the real fun was about to start. I'd let her give me the weapon. I'd let her try to hide it. I'd even let her think she'd succeeded. But when the time came, I'd make sure everyone saw it that it's one thing to know you've got the upper hand. It's another thing entirely to let everyone else see it. That Saturday morning, I poured myself coffee, sat at my desk, and pulled up the list of people who could hurt Vanessa the most, without me lifting a single finger. First on the list, her broker. The guy who ran her agency liked 2 things, control and plausible deniability. If one of his agents got caught violating commission laws, it would be the kind of scandal that got whispered about at every networking brunch in the state. Second on the list, her mother. Now, normally, dragging family into a mess is petty. But Vanessa's mother is different. She lives for gossip and sees herself as the moral gatekeeper of the family. If she knew her daughter was breaking the law, It wouldn't be out of shame that she reacted. It'd be out of fear she'd be seen as enabling it. Third on the list, her clients. The big ones. The ones with enough money to make trouble if they thought they'd been played. I didn't contact any of them yet. Instead, I started laying breadcrumbs. At 9:17 a.m., I sent a group text to 6 mutual friends. All I wrote was, "Hey, anyone know what happens if a realtor takes a commission without disclosing it to the listing broker?" Asking for a friend. Within 2 minutes, my phone lit up. One text, "LOL, that's a felony, right?" Another, "Who did that?" Spill. A third, "Sounds like you're sitting on something juicy." I didn't answer any of them. Silence does more damage than details. By noon, Vanessa was edgy. She kept glancing at her phone, then glancing at me. "You're being weird again," she said as we passed in the hallway. I smiled. Just thinking. About what? I sipped my coffee. About how quickly the truth travels when the right people start asking the wrong questions. Her jaw tightened. "You're bluffing." I set my cup down and stepped close enough that she had to tilt her head back to meet my eyes. "Vanessa, I don't bluff. I calibrate." She swallowed hard and looked away. That night, I made my second breadcrumb drop. This one was for her. I printed a copy of the fraudulent finder's fee contract, highlighted the relevant law it violated, and left it in an unsealed envelope on the passenger seat of her Range Rover. When she found it the next morning, she didn't mention it. But I could see the shift. She was quieter, slower to pick up her phone, avoiding eye contact like she was afraid I'd see what she was thinking. Monday morning, I upped the pace. At 8:02 a.m., I sent an anonymous tip to a real estate ethics forum Vanessa followed religiously. Hypothetical. What if an agent accepted a large cash payment from a buyer on a property they weren't representing without notifying the listing broker? How long before the state board investigates? It was posted under a throwaway account, but I knew she'd see it. I also knew she'd assume it was about her. By 9:15 a.m., she texted me, "Do you read forum name?" I replied, "Sometimes." "Why?" Her answer came back instantly. "No reason." The real trigger, though, was lunch. I walked into her brokerage office carrying 2 coffees, one for me, one for her boss. Vanessa was out showing a property, so I left it on his desk with a sticky note that read, "Thought you might like to see this before the state does." Underneath, a sealed envelope. Inside, the contract. I didn't sign my name. I didn't have to. The highlight marks were mine, same ones she'd seen in her car. That evening, she came home late. The second she walked in, I knew she'd been hit. Her face was pale, her movements stiff, like she was trying to keep her hands from shaking. She didn't even put her purse down before speaking. "What did you do?" I leaned back on the couch, flipping the page of my book. "You'll have to be more specific." "Don't play with me, damn it," she snapped, her voice cracking. "Do you have any idea what could happen if that contract gets to the board?" I lowered the book. "I have exactly an idea. The question is, do you?" Her eyes went wide for a moment before she masked it. "If you think you can blackmail me." I chuckled. "Blackmail is when you ask for something in exchange for silence. I haven't asked for a thing. Yet. That, yet, landed like a brick." The next day, the first ripple hit. She got a call mid-morning. I was at the kitchen table, pretending to read email, but really listening. "Yes," she said into the phone, her tone too bright. "Of course I understand." "No, I didn't realize." "Yes, I'll get it handled." When she hung up, she walked past me without a word. But I saw the sweat on her temples, the tight set of her jaw. That night, I made the first public cut. I took her phone while she showered and forwarded the contract to her mother. No explanation, no context, just the file and the message. "I thought you should see what your daughter's been up to." I deleted the sent message from her phone, then sat back and waited. It didn't take long. At 9:47 p.m., her phone rang, Mom. I could hear the voice from across the room. Sharp, furious, rising in pitch. Vanessa tried to talk over her, but it was no use. When she finally hung up, she glared at me. "What did you say to her?" I shrugged. "Nothing. But apparently, she's not a fan of your business practices." By Wednesday, she was unraveling in earnest. She started making calls in the car instead of the house, lowering her voice whenever she passed me. She avoided going into the office. And she stopped posting on Instagram altogether, which was like asking a fish to stop swimming. I let it ride for 2 more days before setting the stage for the finale. Friday night, we were supposed to have dinner with friends. She begged off at the last second, claiming she felt off. When I got home later, She was sitting at the kitchen table with a glass of wine, staring at nothing. "I don't know what you want from me," she said finally. I set my keys down. "I want you to understand something, Vanessa. You thought you were playing me. You thought I was a placeholder, a background character in your story." I stepped closer, leaning on the table. "But here's the thing about placeholders. They hold the line until it's time to pull it. And when they do, everything on the other side falls." She swallowed hard. "And it's about to fall, Vanessa," I said softly. "Everywhere you look." The final push was ready. The question was, should I drop it all at once, or make her live in the freefall for a while? I already knew my answer. Saturday morning, I set the dominoes in motion. At 8:04 a.m., I mailed the first envelope to the state licensing board. Not a copy. The original fraudulent contract, with her signature, the buyer's name, and the property address. It went out certified mail, tracking and all. At 9:12 a.m., I mailed the second, to her biggest client, a developer known for two things: high-rises and zero tolerance for scandal. I didn't include a letter, just the contract and the highlighted statute. No need for commentary. By 10:30 a.m., I'd sent a blind copy to her broker's personal email, ensuring he couldn't claim ignorance. Then I sat back and let the phone lines do the rest. By noon, she'd taken 3 calls in the kitchen, each one ending sharper than the last. She didn't even look at me. Just paced, hair falling out of its perfect bun, wine glass already half full. "You," she hissed as she slammed her phone on the counter. "What exactly do you think you're accomplishing?" I didn't even glance up from the paper. Not thinking. Doing. That night, she tried to get ahead of it. I overheard her calling her boyfriend, the contractor. "They've got nothing," she whispered. "It's just scare tactics. I can spin this." I let her keep thinking that. Monday morning, her broker called her into his office. She left the house in heels and a suit that screamed, "I still have authority." She came back 2 hours later looking like she'd just swallowed bleach. "Suspension pending investigation," she muttered when I asked. "Temporary." I sipped my coffee. Temporary's a funny word. Could mean a day, could mean forever. She glared at me, but there was no heat in it anymore. Just calculation, trying to figure out where the leak was coming from. By Tuesday, her boyfriend was radio silent. Calls went straight to voicemail, texts unanswered. She smashed a wine glass that night. I swept it up in silence. By Thursday, her mother had told half the family she was facing serious legal trouble. Her sister called to check in, which was code for fishing for details. And me? I stayed calm, took long walks, slept well, ate better than I had in months. Because I knew the next phase would crush her completely. Friday morning, I set the cruel part in motion. I logged into our joint accounts and initiated a transfer, my share of the liquid assets, plus a few accounts she didn't even know existed, ones I'd kept in my name only. By noon, those funds were safe in a trust she couldn't touch. At 2 p.m., my lawyer filed the divorce petition. The grounds: fraud, marital misconduct, and dissipation of marital assets. Attached: every receipt, every text, every email. The oak box had finally emptied into the legal system. At 4 p.m., I sent a short, precise email to the private school board where she'd been bragging about joining the fundraising committee. Attached: the contract and her suspension notice. That night, I came home with takeout. She was sitting at the dining table, staring at a stack of papers, the divorce filing. "You're ending this?" she asked, voice low. "No," I said, setting the food down. "You ended this. I'm just making it official." She laughed bitterly. "You think you've won?" I leaned on the table. "No, Vanessa. I don't think I've won. I know I have. And the best part? You handed me the win yourself." The hearing was 3 weeks later. She walked in with a new lawyer, hair perfect, makeup flawless, smile rehearsed. She still thought she could charm her way out of this. But when my lawyer submitted Exhibit 14, a signed affidavit from her boyfriend's wife confirming the affair, the cash payments, and the property violations, Vanessa's face cracked. Not a lot. Just enough for me to see the fear she'd been hiding. The judge ruled in my favor on every count. I kept the house, the savings, and half her brokerage's residual commissions, what little was left. But the real twist came after court. We walked out into the hallway. She caught up to me, voice shaking. "You ruined me." I turned, calm as ever. "No, Vanessa. I just let everyone see who you really are." Then I handed her an envelope. Inside, a copy of the contract. Not for the board, not for court. This one was addressed to the IRS. Her hands shook as she looked up at me. You wouldn't. I smiled. You've been underestimating me since the day you stopped loving me. That was your first mistake. Assuming I'd stopped loving myself was your last. I walked away. Behind me, she didn't call my name. She just stood there, holding the envelope, finally realizing that the fall wasn't over. Not yet. And that was it. No shouting match, no slammed doors, no theatrics. Just precision. The kind of ending you don't see coming until it's already wrapped around your throat. The oak box is empty now, but I still keep it on my desk. Not as a reminder of her, but as a reminder of me. Because once you learn how to dismantle someone without raising your voice, you don't forget.